This is She Creates Business, a podcast for wedding pros. Your host, Kinsey Roberts, interviews incredible women in the wedding industry who are making their mark and creating success on their terms. Join the conversation.
Hey there, this is your host, Kinsey Roberts. Thanks so much for tuning in to She Creates Business, a podcast for wedding pros. This is episode 1, and today I'm speaking with Estes of the Prairie Letter Shop. I'm going to do her professional bio here quickly, and then we'll get into the show. It's a really good one. I know you're going to love it. Alex grew up on the West Coast. She's the daughter of a teacher, crafter, mom, and a dad who's a film executive. Given this family history, it really makes perfect sense that she would end up as a teacher turned creative entrepreneur. With limited television allowed in her house, Alex filled her time with art projects and make-believe businesses. Her love for lettering was apparent very early on as she lettered her aunt's wedding invitations when she was just 12 years old. After a stint with Teach for America in the Mississippi Delta and a few more years teaching high school English in Brooklyn, Alex took a leap of faith that landed her in the middle of the country in none other than Tulsa, Oklahoma. She began work here as a teacher trainer. A manager here noticed her need for a creative outlet, and this is when her Etsy shop was born. Within 2 months, Alex was really surprised to find herself spending many late nights filling rubber stamp orders and lettering envelopes, and even more surprised by how much she loved the work. After building her skill and networking with incredible mentors for over a year, she heard God calling her to take another leap of faith into a drastic career change. This is when Alex opened the doors of Prairie Letter Shop full-time, and that was June 1st, 2015. Now you'll find Alex in her home studio, listening to Spotify or podcasts, that's my girl Alex, and sipping just a bit too much coffee as she fills orders. She loves spin class, collects journals and craft supplies, volunteers at her church, and lives for adventures with her very handsome boyfriend, who's also her #1 cheerleader. You can find her on Instagram at Prairie Letter Shop, where she almost daily posts journal doodles and swoons over paper goods. Doesn't she sound amazing? I know you guys are going to love her. Let's go to the show. Hey there, welcome to the She Creates Business podcast. This is your host, Kinsey Roberts from Vista View Events, and I am here today with the wonderful Alex from Prairie Letter Shop. I need to brag on her for just a second before she introduces herself. We just briefly met recently at the Creative at Heart conference, and I emailed her and said, hey, I'm starting this podcast. Would you please be a guest? And she literally responded in like 5 minutes and said, absolutely. That's the kind of generous heart she has, and I'm just so pleased to have her here. Alex, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Kinsey. Thank you so much for having me.
It is seriously my pleasure. I'm so excited to have you here and to truly hear more about your story because like I mentioned, we only got to talk for a few minutes. We talked about the venue and you told me about a couple of girls you know who also started a venue there on the East Coast, and literally in like 5 minutes, you were just so helpful and encouraging, and I knew I wanted to know more about you. So thank you for being here.
Well, likewise. It's my pleasure.
Well, we're going to get started. So Alex, briefly tell us who you are, where you're from, and what you do in the wedding industry.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So as Kinsey said, my name is Alex Estes. I have a business called Prairie Letter Shop. So we're based in Tulsa, Oklahoma, hence the prairie part. And this is where the middle of the country is where I started my business. And so my business name really sort of pays homage to this part of the country that is really special and very community oriented and small, but big enough for all the things that you need. I'm originally a West Coaster. So I grew up in Seattle and Los Angeles, and then in my adult years before I lived in Tulsa, where I live now, I had a little stint teaching in Mississippi, and then I also taught kiddos in New York City. So I've lived kind of all over the place, but I didn't really feel like I had a home base until I moved here to Tulsa. So my business is a hand lettering and calligraphy studio. And so I am mostly a wedding stationer. So I do envelopes, I do envelope calligraphy, and then I also do full invitation suites. Most of my designs are handmade or hand painted. So I really like to make stuff with my hands. That's the biggest joy that I find in creating. And then I also have a sizable chunk of my business that's dedicated to lettering education. So I spend quite a bit of time teaching workshops, and then I have some products that are geared towards supporting others in the realm of lettering. And then the final little piece of my business is that I do have some products that I sell as well, and that's mostly a holiday thing. So in general, my business is somewhat multifaceted, that I offer product and services, and I'm proud to be a wedding vendor, but also have my toes in some other worlds as well.
Absolutely. Alex, will you kind of tell me, I know, okay, so you ended up in Tulsa, and that's when you started Prairie Letter Shop?
Yes.
Okay.
That's
when was that?
Yeah, that was in 2013. So
Okay.
I had just moved to Oklahoma. I had no context for Oklahoma, but I just had this weird feeling that I would really like it. I was living in Brooklyn, and while I had a lot of fun living in New York, I just kind of was starting to feel like the city was a little bit too big for me. And so this idea of moving somewhere completely new and starting fresh, I got recruited. I was teaching teachers how to teach English, essentially. So I was working for an organization called Teach for America.
Yes.
I'm not sure if you're, yeah.
You betcha.
Yeah, so I was a Teach for America Corps member when I taught in Mississippi, and so I had the opportunity to move here to Oklahoma to actually travel around the state and coach teachers and lead their professional development. So part of my love of sharing sort of my skills and knowledge with other people in the creative field really comes from my first life as an educator and teacher coach. But when I moved here to Tulsa, I really struggled just to have kind of a life outside of work. I had always really struggled with that in the 4 years before that when I was sort of in the professional world. And so a manager really urged me that I'd been here for maybe 2 or 3 months, and a manager urged me to do something different and just like get a life kind of conversation. It's like, I'm really worried about you. You need to do something for yourself. What's something that you've always wanted to do? And I had always done lettering sort of just as a hobby, just doodling, and I decorated my classroom with a lot of lettering and put a lot of heart into kind of crafting and that sort of world. And so it was always a very much a hobby. And so I opened the most ramshackle Etsy shop you can ever imagine.
Ramshackle. I love it.
Yeah. I was not one of those people who, stress over detail and making sure my logo was perfect and my listings were perfect before putting anything up. I just kind of threw caution to the wind and just threw something together on a Saturday. And it was pretty hilarious looking back on how just piecemeal it was, but it brought me a lot of joy. And so that's really where I started. I started with mostly wedding envelopes. So most of the samples that I had on my very interesting Etsy page were just envelope styles, not even calligraphy, just hand lettering and some place cards and things like that.
And so, okay, and you know what? In 2013, I feel like even 3 years ago, Etsy itself was just a different place. You know what I mean?
Oh, totally.
Like it has completely evolved in even just in 3 years. So, I don't hesitate to say you are certainly not alone.
Yeah.
And okay, so I have a question then. So you started with like place cards and envelopes. Was that just you like purchasing those types of things and then putting your customization on them and then selling them that way? Or could people order custom products? Tell me more about the kind of first iteration.
Girl, I went to Michael's and bought myself some really low quality envelopes and just had a ball. I had actually one of those little photo albums, those like plastic photo albums that are kind of like that 4x6 size that a grandma might like take around and show pictures of her grandchildren in or whatever. But I took a bunch of envelopes and place cards and just made some samples and kept them in a little album. And so when I was putting stuff up on Etsy, it was very much like here's an envelope and this is a very shoddy picture of it. But so really I was just trying to see if anybody under the sun would give me the opportunity to work on their projects. I wasn't really thinking about being profitable at the time,
Sure.
as many people who start businesses are kind of in that world. But at the time it was really just putting my general offerings up on Etsy, and then actually it was much more for me about sharing it with my social media networks and people I already knew on Facebook. So when I started my shop, I really didn't think that any strangers would ever see any of my work. So mostly it really started with my network of family and friends. And so at that point, it was just kind of planting the seed that that's something that I was offering, hand lettering, and people came out of the woodwork from my social media and just, groups and connections and things, and just asked me to do all kinds of interesting things that had nothing to do with envelopes and place cards. But that was really kind of the jumping off point.
Sure. Okay. So, isn't that funny how we don't know like who's kind of like lurking in the background, but then you start something and they're like your biggest supporters. They're like, hey, could you make me this print or whatever,
Yes. That's the story of my business, truly.
Well, okay, tell me then, let's kind of like not really transition, but tell me then, so here's Alex in Michael's buying envelopes and plastic photo albums. Tell me about the transition from that iteration of Prairie Letter Shop. So take us into, as you start to see this as more of a business, to kind of take us over that journey.
Yes. I mean, I could talk all day about my humble beginnings. I love to sort of poke fun at myself. But the truth is, when I started my business, it was in the holiday season, and that was a huge advantage for me. One of the reasons is that right after the holiday season, as we know, is engagement season. So I had a huge holiday season because of one friend, exactly as you said, somebody who I didn't even know was along with me in the way that she ended up, being such a huge supporter for my business in the early stages and still is. And she asked me to make a rubber stamp for her wedding invitations. She had been planning her wedding for a while, and she wanted a rubber stamp made for her. And I created one, and then she posted it on a Tumblr. This is 2013, so Tumblr was a thing. And she posted it on Tumblr, and I probably got 40 to 50 orders just from her one post. And so, yeah, my business grew overnight with rubber stamps, and I really, it started to grow and really become more like a business when I started selling rubber stamps. That was followed by, again, the engagement season. I ended up doing so many envelopes that first winter. So right after the holidays, that first January, I had been in business, 4 or 5 months by that point. And I was going back and forth between New York and Oklahoma. I hadn't really settled here. Oh, wow. And I would probably do, at that point, because I was hand lettering, I would do 3 to 4 orders on a weekend. So that was a time when I was still working in my full-time job. So all of this was taking place sort of at night and just kind of in the wee hours. So in time, just a lot of opportunity came with experience. The more, especially the more weddings I worked on, the more I realized how amazing it was to be part of the creative process of a wedding. I didn't really start out with the intention of ever becoming a quote-unquote wedding vendor, but that sort of evolved over time as I just got to know brides and sort of their stories and the process of planning weddings. And so that's sort of how things kind of took off on the wedding and product side. So for a very long time, in that I would say the first year and a half when I was still working in my full-time job, the bulk of my business was still wedding envelopes and making products, cards, bridesmaid cards, things like that. And to be very fair, I have to say that part of my entry into the wedding world was that is what was profitable for me at the time. That's where the money was in hand lettering at the time. And though there's all kinds of opportunities for hand letters now, it really was a wedding focused operation. And then in time, I started to want to blend kind of my love of teaching and education with my love of lettering. And so I did one workshop sort of in the midst of that season where I was just growing. And I did one workshop with a friend. I just kind of guest spoke at a craft workshop that she was planning. And I posted my packet. It was a really simple, rudimentary packet that I had made it at Staples. Yeah. I posted it on my Instagram, and I think I had 40 to 50 people comment at that time that they wanted one. Again, so much of my business story is just about following what people want and following what people were needing and asking for. So I would say by the time I sold my first kind of batch of lettering kits that were very different from what I sell now, very, very basic in their form, but it's something that people really needed. So from that point on, things really sort of took off. And after a while, I was creating full invitation suites and had eventually the ability to move my business to full time.
Oh my gosh, I love this. Okay, so I have two questions I don't want to forget. The first is that first kind of version of your packet, was that the inspiration for what is now the Daily Lettering Journal, or am I wrong?
Yes. No, you're absolutely right. Yeah, at the time, this was probably sometime in, I want to say it was 2014. I don't know if you remember this, but back in the day, people were doing a lot of Instagram sales. So they would post something and say, like, drop your PayPal,
Yes,
in
girl.
the comments.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, so that's not a terribly efficient way to run a business. I was sending off at one point I was sending off hundreds of PayPal invoices from Instagram comments. So that was not particularly efficient. And I was also, because I was a hand letterer and really loved the idea of happy mail was really big at that time, this idea of sending fun stuff in the mail, I hand lettered every single package. So that really was the beginning. But the kit that I sell, or the journal that I sell now, the product that is kind of my focus now, is more of a structure to get people into the mode of daily practice. And so that's what I found the more I taught workshops, the more I heard people frustrated in their own place where they were in their creativity, where they just wanted to grow as fast as possible, and they didn't see a ton of improvement. And so the lettering journal was birthed from the original lettering kits that I sold, which were very basic, but they really are focused more on the idea of providing a space for daily practice.
Okay. So spoiler alert, listeners, I just purchased actually a daily lettering journal from Alex, and I'm really excited to get it.
Yay.
Yeah, I got it yesterday, I think. I was on the pre-order email list, but so anyway, it's going to be shipped. But so for me, I just got it because I guess I don't really consider myself, quote, creative, but I got it because I just want a new hobby, kind of. And I'm excited to just try something new. So that's me. And I'm sure that there are people like that. But do you find that the people who are ordering your daily lettering journal or coming to your local workshops are more like me in that they are interested in learning a new hobby? Or are you teaching sorry, I'm stuttering. Or do you find that your clients are more like, or the folks who take part in your education, do they also want to start a hand lettering business? Or do you have a good, healthy mix of both?
Yeah, that's a great question. I definitely have a healthy mix of both.
Uh-huh.
I would say there's a sizable chunk of folks who already do a lot of doodling and practice and watch tons of, Instagram videos and tutorials and things like that. So I am lucky to get to kind of intercept them when they are new in their journey and just give them a little bit of support and structure so that they can experiment a ton and try different tools. And then I do have a ton of folks, especially with the lettering journals, that just are first very beginners, don't consider themselves hand letters necessarily, but really want, as you said, to try something new that's different from being in front of a screen or watching TV or whatever else. So something creative to tap into just sort of your imagination and in your creative practice, maybe at night or during nap time or a school break or whatever else. So yeah, I would say a very healthy balance between the two, and I love that.
That's awesome. Well, so I think it's obvious from the products that you create that teach others how to letter and the local workshops that you host and your background as a teacher, of course, it's obvious that you value education and that you value helping other people, move forward in their creative practices or what have you. And as I mentioned, Alex and I met at the Creative at Heart conference, which is a conference for other creative business owners. And so I have a question. You were one of the sponsors of that conference. Alex created these amazing mugs. I am drinking out of mine right now. It says "Do everything with heart." Yay! So my question is this: when did you transitioning? When did you start, I guess, building relationships with other people in this industry? Because when you have an online business, I know it's not easy to meet other people, particularly if you live where I live, which is out in the country in Colorado.
Yeah.
When did you realize that you wanted to start building those relationships, and how did you get involved in conferences and sponsoring and things of that nature?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I think one of the things that has been an advantage for my business is that I have never been shy at any stage of my business as far as putting myself out there. So I think exactly as I described with how I started, very scrappy.
Yeah.
I have really benefited from just not worrying so much about having things be in a perfect place before I reach out to somebody or try to initiate a collaboration or contact. So it started for me actually when I first started my business. I knew that I wanted to work more with wedding vendors and transition to working more with local weddings. And so I have a great group of friends here in Tulsa who have a floral and design business that's lovely called Ever Something. Mm-hmm. And I actually met up with them. I emailed them out of the blue. I introduced myself and I said, I have this box of samples and a few treats for you. Can you please meet up with me and let me just hand this box off to you? And so they were very gracious. It got back to me right away. And we met up in a coffee shop, and I felt really vulnerable at first because I realized quickly that some of the samples and things that I made for them might not be like perfect for this style of where they were in their business at the time. And I just felt kind of down on myself after the meeting because I thought I kind of blew it. I thought I just brought all the wrong stuff and did all the wrong things. But they called me the very next week to create some signage for a wedding of theirs. And so I think it just is a strong push for everybody to, regardless of where they are, regardless of how confident they feel in what they're doing, to really put themselves out there. So I think that interaction really gave me that confidence to just go forth and just try to meet as many people as I could. We have a really strong community here in Tulsa of creatives, and so there are all kinds of networking meetups and things like that I've benefited from. But I do think it's important that you mention experiences like Creative at Heart that are conferences. I have invested a lot of money. I mean, that's like, just put it out there. I've invested a lot of money in conferences and professional education and development for my business. And so those experiences, while they can happen pretty organically in your local community, you really actually have to invest in them, and you have to make it a priority. So for me, at the beginning of this year, at least, once I have an accountant now, and I sat down with my accountant and I expressed my desire I was trying to think about like, what can I afford as far as creative experiences and conferences? And my accountants gave me a figure, and they said, this is your professional development budget. This is what, we would recommend based on your earnings. And I like tripled that budget. So I did not.
You're like, budget, gotta go.
The point is, I've benefited so much from every experience that I've been to, but I just think it's really important to note that some people are kind of gun shy about registering for a conference or going to an experience even alone. And I can't emphasize enough how important it is to put yourself out there and also just put your money where your mouth is. And if community is important for you, to actually take that step.
Oh my gosh, I could not agree more. Creative at Heart was my first in-person experience in this industry. And I mean, I've been to other experiences in my professional life and things of that nature. But this is my first experience, and I can't say enough about it. Like, I'm going to be in a puddle on the floor because it was just so wonderful. And I just met so many amazing people. So yes to all of that.
Yeah,
and 100%. You know what? It is an investment. And I think investing, I feel like it's kind of a leap of faith, truly, to invest in yourself at any stage in your business. I guess when you're further along in your business, you probably feel more confident in your ability to recoup that cost, I would say. So it is a little bit of a leap of faith at the beginning to invest in yourself. But if you're listening to this and you're struggling with whether or not you should attend a conference, the answer is yes.
Yeah.
The answer is yes. If you were waiting for a sign, this is it.
Yes. And I think on that note, one thing that what you said, just to even take further, the idea of, especially if you're a wedding professional, the idea of being in a place where you can see some of the people who are in the top of your industry create experiences that inspire you, I think that is huge. So just as an example of that, I had the pleasure of going to the True Vi workshop earlier in the year, and that was so amazing as far as being in a space where Ree, who from Hey Gorgeous Events, who leads the conference, just created the most intentional and gorgeous setups and styling for every single day, every transition. There were gifts and surprises, and just everything was so thoughtful and intentional. But there was absolutely nothing that she could have posted on Instagram or on her blog that would have let me into her perspective and helped me sort of experience what it feels like to be one of her brides, and being like walk into a room that is fully styled and with candles burning and that sort of thing. There's just nothing that could have done that for me. And so I say that as yes, it's amazing to go to conferences and experience the networking and the knowledge and the education, but there's something about putting yourself in the midst of something where you actually have the opportunity to experience, and feel the best of the best.
Yes, very well said. So well said.
Yeah.
This is okay. I want to ask this because I don't want to forget. You mentioned while we were talking about your education budget that you have an accountant now, and this is transitioning a little bit, but I think this is an important point to make, and I'm interested myself to know what really are, in addition to people and services like accountants, but what are now that this is your full-time business, what are the tools or the software or the services that you use to help you run this business that make Prairie Letter Shop, your full-time income?
Yeah, that's a great question. So part of that, so I do have a group, an accounting group here that provides bookkeeping and accounting and sort of, I think the most important part that I didn't realize of that structure that really that structure has allowed me to grow is they take care of all of the legal stuff. So setting up my LLC and figuring out the things that I need for tax and sales tax and all sorts of things. So paperwork wise, that's been a huge blessing because I know a lot of creative entrepreneurs and wedding pros really struggle with those initial steps. So that's something that I didn't even know that was a benefit that they would provide. And then as far as the day-to-day, so one major change that has happened in my business that has changed sort of the landscape of what this looks like for me is that I this summer moved into a permanent studio and workshop space. And so
congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. That has been a huge shift because that has added a new element of expenses and sort of responsibilities. But in order to keep everything together and as far as software and tools, I'm a pretty simple gal. I don't have a ton of systems that I use. I use 17 Hats as my project management system, and I do all of my client-facing surveys and invoices and contracts and things like that. Through 17 Hats. After trying a bunch of different softwares, it's the one that I love. And then on the product side, which I know may not appeal to all of the wedding folks, but on the product side, I use my Squarespace shop. I use ShipStation, which is a really great resource for shipping, and so that's another subscription. And then I would say that pretty much covers it. I am a mostly paper person, so as far as keeping guest lists and things organized, I like to have paper copies. I keep them in kind of school style folders, and I use a paper planner. So I'm one of those like dinosaur people.
Me too.
Yeah.
we can be dinosaurs together. It's fine.
Yes. Yes.
That's great. So so 17 Hats, I'm familiar with them. And I just want to mention for all the listeners that everything that Alex and I are talking about today, you can find in the show notes. So if you go to the shecreatesbusinesspodcast.com, I will link to everything Alex is talking about, including her daily lettering journal and her local workshop. So don't feel like you need to take notes or write anything down because I'll have that all for you. Now, okay, so you moved into a studio, over the summer. So where were you working before? I assume at your house, or?
Yes, okay. I'm like rolling my eyes as I say that because by the end, it just got to be really painful.
Sure.
I actually just wrote a blog. I'm sure by the time this podcast is live and being enjoyed by folks, the blog will be up. But I just wrote a blog about the transition from working from your home to working in a studio or office space. I know a lot of wedding vendors do co-working spaces and that sort of thing. So I have a lot of thoughts on this topic. But yes, I was working from my home. And the reason why it really did not work for me after a while is just the amount of supplies that are required for my job. So, we had like catastrophic ink spills and cardboard boxes in every nook and cranny of my house. I have a roommate, and so she has given me so much grace as far as the amount of just stuff. There was just stuff crammed into every cabinet, corner, and above the fridge, everywhere. So that has been the biggest transition for me is being in a space where I can actually have the just the tabletop space to work has been huge. So yes, it's been a huge blessing.
Oh gosh. Well, and okay, so is your studio space like a co-working space, or is it just you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the things that has made it affordable for me to have a permanent home here, one is the obvious fact that perhaps not obvious to everybody, but in Tulsa, here in a smaller city, our rent is just more affordable. There are a lot of cities where I probably couldn't make this work. But the other thing is I'm sharing a space with a really lovely friend of mine who is opening a stationery shop in the front of our space. So I basically occupy the back half, and she has sort of more the storefront space. And so her shop is going to be opening in September. It's called Merriment. And she's actually somebody I met at a networking group, a Creative Chicks networking group here in Tulsa. So that's another plug for getting out there and meeting the people in your community who are working on creative business, just because you never know. There's sort of the side conversations or offhand comments that folks make that would spark a light bulb like, hey, this is something that we could do together. So it's not currently a co-working space. I do have friends who stop by and bring their computers and just work in a quiet space where I have, tea and coffee and sometimes treats or whatever else. But so it's a shared space for now.
That sounds wonderful. I always, I work out of my house right now. And so I'm always like, gosh, I wish there was like a co-working space in our area, because I love chatting to people, but then I'm like, gosh, they'd probably be like, Kinsey, please leave because we're trying to work. I'd be like, hey, what you doing? How's it going?
Yeah. Yep. And I'm an introvert myself. So it really did working from home work for me for a while. Because that type of interaction can really bump me off track big time as far as getting work done. But it's really nice to have a space where you can just check in with people and not feel lonely. And so I totally get that. And I hope for you that maybe it's something that you'll open.
Exactly. Yes, seriously.
Maybe you'll do it.
Maybe it's in my future. Tell you what, I'm writing it down right now.
There you go.
Okay, so you said something really powerful there, which was that it was, talking about your shopmate, basically, who you met at a Creative Chicks networking event. And then you said after that was kind of another plug for just getting out there, because you never know what kind of side conversations are happening around you that could, connect you with the right person right when you need it, basically. In addition to that, what is kind of another tangible piece of advice that you would offer someone who either wants to do what you're doing as a wedding pro, or they're just in the wedding space in general? I feel like in any creative industry, we do get a lot of encouragement, and that's wonderful. But I do think that there are, some tangible pieces of advice that could help us even more, such as, get an accountant, or, use 17 Hats as your project management software. What's another tangible piece of advice that someone could take and apply either to their current business or future business?
Yeah, that is a great question. And something that I've been thinking about a lot lately is this idea of not necessarily keeping your head down and not worrying about what other folks are doing, but I just feel like with so much more information out there, and as you said, there's lots of advice. There are courses and groups and online communities, which that did not exist when I started my business. There's so much information, and I think that leads to, for some people, a sense of paralysis, because they might not feel like they're worthy of getting started because they don't have all the pieces together that someone else might be expressing that they have figured out already, or whatever else. And so I think the main thing that I would advise somebody wanting to get into the wedding world, or even doing something more like what I did, getting started with product, is to focus so much more on what you're actually offering and what makes you different in your products or your services. If you're a wedding professional, thinking so clearly about what your client experience looks like and how you treat the people who come your way and what you offer and how you do it. And so much less initially about what your logo looks like, or how many Instagram followers you have, or how successful you are in terms of how profitable you are at this very second. But thinking so much more about what you actually have to offer the world. Because I think when you do that, you give yourself freedom focus on the things that are really actually going to push you forward and make you profitable in the long run. And I think on that note, it doesn't matter if you are just getting started and you have X number of 100 Instagram followers. If you have people of any, a crowd of any size around you, and you offer something that is valuable and unique and different, you will get business from that and you will grow. If you have 10,000 people following you and you're not offering something that is authentic or meaningful, or people can't see what it is that you do well, they're not going to buy from you. They're not going to support you. And so more than anything, I just want people to know that the gifts that they have to offer to the world, and what makes them special and unique and different from the next person, that is really the thing that is deserving of our attention, and so much less about comparing ourselves to others or understanding how, figuring out how many followers we need to get to this point or that point. It's really just so much more about the craft and doing what we love.
I was just nodding my head along with that whole, with everything. Like, yes, put down the hex codes, people. It doesn't matter what color your logo is right now.
Yeah, that's so true. It really, and no graphic designers, I hope graphic designers don't interpret that as a knock. It's just that wherever you are when you're starting, you don't want the hex codes to be the thing that stands in your way from taking the next step.
Exactly. That's exactly right. We're not saying that business branding is not important, because it is. What we are saying is that there is no brand in the world that is going to hide a product that is either hastily done or that you don't actually like doing, because it will all come out in the end, regardless of how stunning your brand is.
Yes, I love that. That's so true.
Graphic designers and branders, we love you. We do.
Couldn't do it without you.
That's right. That's exactly right. Well, you know what, Alex, as we wrap up here, I would just love to know if you could share what are kind of things you're excited about right now in terms of your business, and what's on the horizon for Prairie Letter Shop as we move out of 2016 and into the next year.
Oh, I love that. And thinking about that, I don't really think about 2017 a whole lot. I'm definitely in the here and now, right now in this stage of wedding season. But even just hearing you ask that made me really excited for what's to come, and made me really excited about thinking forward. The main thing that is on the docket for the fall is really thinking about product and easing out of wedding season and into more product for the holidays. And so I'm really excited about a couple of new offerings. I'm creating a companion to the lettering journal that is a scripture-focused product, and I'm doing a lot of blogging and things like that related to my faith, which I'm really excited about. And then in 2017, it's going to be a lot of focus on self-care. I have to be honest.
Good.
I'm really wanting to focus on just narrowing things down and sharpening even further my offerings, and thinking about ways to have a little bit more intentional margin in my life so that I can enjoy the flexibility that is inherent in owning your own business. So really looking forward to getting into a season of more intentionality, which I know is the goal for all of us, but
Sure.
That's where I am for sure. Yeah.
I'm so happy to hear you say that. I think that's really important for everyone to hear. Me too. I'm at the beginning stages of my wedding business. We have a venue, so and I just love that. There is definitely a time for hustle, and then there's a time for margin and intentionality into taking care of yourself. So I'm definitely in the hustle season still, but I love to hear you say that you have to actually be intentional about it, and so I know that we can all do it.
Yes, you can. You absolutely can if you plan ahead for it.
Yeah. Well, Alex, thank you again so much. I honestly can't thank you enough. I'm sorry. You're probably sick of hearing that, but thank you so much for being here. It's seriously my pleasure and such an honor to have you here. And I know that I got so much out of this interview. I know a lot of other people will too.
Well, thank you so much, Kinsey, for having me. This is really, really fun. So Thank you for the work that you're doing to share all this encouragement with others.
Oh, you're so welcome. Can you please tell us where we can find you online?
Yes, so you can find me on Instagram at Prairie Letter Shop, and you can also find me in my sort of home place of my website where my blog and all of my learning offerings are located, and that's at prairielettershop.com.
Perfect. Well, Alex, thank you so much. Alex Estes, everybody, of Prairie Letter Shop, and I will talk to you soon offline, I'm sure.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Kinsey.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to She Creates Business. Please take a minute and head to iTunes to leave an honest review so we can help more wedding pros find the show.